The first time I realized I might be in serious trouble wasn't when she sent me money. It was months later when she stopped sending it and didn't explain why. No argument. No warning. Just silence where there used to be concern. That silence hit harder than any accusation could have, because it told me something had shifted on her side, and I wasn't in control of the story anymore. Before all that, everything felt normal. I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I didn't create a fake profile or tell big lies about my life. I was just a Nigerian guy talking to a woman in the US who seemed genuinely interested in me. We talked every day. Long calls. Late nights. She listened when I talked about my struggles, and I listened when she talked about her loneliness. Somewhere along the line, what we had stopped feeling like a conversation and started feeling like a relationship. The money came quietly. One day she asked how I was managing and I answered honestly. A few days later she sent help without asking if I wanted it. I remember telling her it wasn't necessary. I meant that. But she insisted and I accepted, telling myself it didn't change anything between us. That was the lie I didn't realize I was telling myself. Because once money entered the picture, the balance shifted. I started thinking before I spoke. I noticed which stories made her worry more. I didn't ask for anything directly, but I didn't stop her either. Each time she helped, it felt easier to accept. Each time it also felt harder to tell the full truth. I didn't know then that every message, every transfer, every call was slowly turning into something I couldn't explain away. At first, I convinced myself nothing had changed. I told myself she was just busy. People in the US always talk about being busy, so it wasn't strange that replies came slower. What bothered me wasn't the delay though. It was how careful her words suddenly became. She used to talk freely, jump from one topic to another, and laugh in the middle of serious conversations. Now, everything sounded measured, as if she were choosing what to say and what not to say. She started asking questions that felt harmless on the surface but landed differently. She wanted to know precisely when I started my business idea. Exactly how much it cost. Exactly where the money went. I answered her, but I noticed myself pausing before I spoke, replaying my own words in my head before sending them. That was new. I'd never had to manage my words with her before. One night, during a call, she asked me to repeat something I'd told her weeks earlier. I gave the answer I remembered and there was a short silence on the line. Not the kind where the call drops. The kind where someone is thinking. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse me. She just said, "That's not how you explained it last time." Then she changed the subject like nothing happened. But something had happened. After that, I started going back through our old chats. Not because I thought she was lying, but because I was scared I'd forgotten my own version of events. Reading those messages felt strange, like looking at proof of decisions I could no longer undo. I saw patterns I hadn't noticed before. How often money came up. How often my problems lined up with her help. For the first time, I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. If someone else read these messages, what would they think I was doing? And the answer made my stomach tighten. I tried to pull back after that. Not in a dramatic way. Just small changes. I complained less. I stopped mentioning problems unless she asked directly. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was protecting her from worrying and protecting myself from feeling guilty. But the truth was, once you start adjusting your behavior because you're afraid of how it looks, it's already too late to pretend everything is clean. She noticed the change immediately. She always did. She asked if something was wrong and I said no. That word came out too fast. I could hear it in my own voice. She didn't push, but I felt like she was watching more closely now, even through a screen. Then she said something that stayed in my head for days. She told me a coworker of hers had gone through something similar. A long-distance relationship. Money involved. It didn't end well. She said it casually, like she was sharing gossip, but I knew she wasn't. It was a test. I laughed it off and said people exaggerate online. She agreed, but the tone wasn't the same. After that conversation, she stopped offering help completely. No more random transfers. No more, "Let me handle it." At first I felt relief. Like the pressure had lifted. But that relief didn't last. In its place came fear. Because now I had to wonder why she stopped and what she was doing instead. I started imagining her talking to other people about me. Friends. Family. Maybe even someone who understood laws better than emotions. The thought felt ridiculous at first. I wasn't some criminal mastermind. I was just a guy who let things go too far. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that intentions don't matter once things are written down and sent. I began checking my email more often. I don't know what I expected to see, but I was waiting for something. A question. A warning. A message that would confirm my fear wasn't just paranoia. Nothing came. And that silence was worse than any confrontation. The silence dragged on longer than I expected, and that's when my mind started doing what it does best, filling gaps with worst-case stories. Every unknown number that called my phone made my heart jump. Every email notification felt heavier than it should. I started sleeping with my phone next to my pillow, screen facing up, like I was waiting for something to land on it in the middle of the night. Then one evening she finally called. Her voice was calm. Too calm. She didn't sound angry or emotional. That scared me more than shouting ever could. We talked about normal things for a few minutes and I almost relaxed. Then she said she had a question and needed me to be honest with her. I said of course. My mouth said it easily but my body didn't agree. I was already tense. She asked me if I had ever told anyone else about the money she sent. I said no. That part was true. Then she asked if I had ever exaggerated my situation to make her feel sorry for me. I paused. Just for a second. But seconds matter. She noticed. She always noticed. She told me she had gone back and read everything. Every message. Every transfer. She said she wasn't accusing me of anything yet, but things didn't sit right with her anymore. Hearing the word, yet, made my chest feel tight. It meant the story wasn't finished. It meant she was still deciding what this was. I tried to explain myself. I talked about pressure, about circumstances, about misunderstandings. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said something that still rings in my head. I don't think you planned this, but I think you benefited from it. That sentence didn't sound emotional. It sounded final. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, realizing something important. This was no longer about feelings. It was about how things looked on paper. And on paper, the story didn't favor me at all. After that call, I couldn't sit still. My room felt smaller, like the walls had moved in a little. I kept replaying her words in my head, especially the way she said them without emotion. When someone stops sounding hurt and starts sounding calm, it usually means they've already crossed a line in their mind. I knew that, but I didn't want to admit it. Over the next few days, she didn't block me or disappear. Instead, she became distant in a controlled way. Replies came on schedule. Short, polite, almost professional. She stopped using my name the way she used to. No more jokes. No more memories. Just conversation stripped down to facts. It felt like being slowly removed from a place I once belonged. Then she asked me to send her proof of how I used the money. I stared at that message for a long time. Not because I had nothing, but because I knew whatever I sent would raise more questions. Receipts don't explain tone. They don't explain timing. They don't explain why certain problems appeared right before certain transfers. I sent what I could and added explanations, hoping context would save me. It didn't. She replied with screenshots. My own messages. Highlighted dates. Arrows pointing at patterns I hadn't wanted to see. She wasn't guessing anymore. She had mapped it out. I realized she must have been doing this for weeks, maybe longer, while I was convincing myself the danger had passed. That was the moment I understood something important. This wasn't just personal for her. She felt embarrassed. And embarrassed people don't just walk away quietly. They look for closure, for justice, or for someone to tell them they weren't stupid. She told me she had spoken to someone about the situation. She didn't say who. She didn't need to. My mind filled in the blanks fast enough. When the call ended, my hands were shaking. Not from fear of losing her. That loss had already happened. This was fear of what could come next, and how little control I had left. The next few days were a blur. I tried to act normal, like everything was fine, but every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened. Every notification felt like a potential trap. Even messages from friends seemed suspicious. I kept imagining that any one of them could be working for her, or telling her what I was doing. My brain wouldn't stop. Sleep became impossible. Nights were long and empty, filled only with the echo of her calm voice and the knowledge that she was watching, planning, waiting. Then it happened. I got a call from an unknown number. I answered immediately, my hands shaking, and I recognized her voice instantly. She didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She spoke carefully, methodically. She told me that she had gone through everything again. Every chat, every transfer, every call. And she said she knew exactly what had happened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't know if I could. My mouth felt dry, like it was failing before the words could escape. She said she wasn't going to report me yet. But she wanted to make sure I understood one thing clearly. If this ever happened again, she would. There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. And that certainty hit harder than any insult or argument could. I realized in that moment that my mistakes weren't just about her. They were evidence. And evidence doesn't care about love, loyalty, or intentions. Evidence only tells the truth. I tried to explain myself again, stumbling over words, trying to frame everything as misunderstanding, as circumstance. But she was quiet. Just listening. Calculating. I could hear the pause between sentences, the rhythm of someone who has already decided what comes next. It wasn't personal, not in the way I wanted it to be. It was final. And final meant there was no more room to negotiate or charm my way out. After that call, I stopped texting. I stopped calling. I didn't want to make it worse. Every day I stayed silent felt like walking on glass. Careful, slow, painfully aware that one wrong step could shatter everything I thought I could fix. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat as much. I barely left my room. And still, I could feel her presence in every message I didn't receive, in every screen that stayed dark. For a while, nothing happened. No messages. No calls. No threats. That quiet almost convinced me I had escaped something. Almost. But deep down, I knew silence like that doesn't mean forgiveness. It means action is happening somewhere else where you can't see it. I started noticing small changes in my own behavior. I avoided talking about her to anyone. I deleted nothing, but I kept rereading everything like I was preparing to defend myself in a room that didn't exist yet. I began imagining questions before they were asked. Why did you say this? Why did you accept that? Why didn't you stop? And the worst part was that I didn't have clean answers. Everything sounded reasonable in my head until I tried to say it out loud. Then one morning, I woke up to an email that didn't come from her. It wasn't dramatic. No bold threats. No accusations. Just formal language asking me to clarify my relationship with her and explain the nature of the financial exchanges between us. My name was written correctly. My location too. That's when the fear turned solid. This wasn't just emotional anymore. This was official. Someone else had stepped into the story. I sat there staring at the screen, realizing how small the world suddenly felt. I had always believed distance protected me. Different countries, different systems, different lives. But reading that email made it clear how wrong that belief was. The internet doesn't care about borders. Messages don't forget where they came from. I didn't reply immediately. I couldn't. I needed time to think, but time felt like something I was running out of. For the first time since all this began, I understood that whatever happened next would follow me for a long time, even if it ended quietly. And that understanding was heavier than fear. After that email, I stopped leaving my room for anything that wasn't necessary. Every time I looked at my phone, I imagined it lighting up with another official message or worse, her confronting me directly. I started double-checking every word I'd ever written, trying to find excuses, ways to explain what I had done without sounding like I had done something wrong. But the more I searched, the less innocent everything felt. Patterns I had ignored before were now impossible to ignore. Each transfer, each story, each explanation I had given her, none of it looked clean when lined up side by side. Sleep became impossible. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how I could fix it, how I could disappear, how I could convince myself that nothing would ever reach her or anyone else. Every scenario ended the same way, with exposure. And with exposure came shame. Not embarrassment. Not regret. Shame that crawled into every part of me, making me question every decision I had made since the first transfer arrived. Then came the night I saw someone outside my window. I don't know if she sent them, if it was coincidence, or if it was just my mind turning paranoia into reality. But I saw a shadow moving slowly across the street, someone standing just far enough that I couldn't make out features, just movement. My chest tightened, my throat went dry. I didn't call anyone. I didn't want to admit I was afraid. I just stayed there, frozen, staring back, wishing it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was the first sign that my life had changed in a way I couldn't undo. I realized then that she had the power. Not just over my heart, not just over my pride, but over my freedom to live without looking over my shoulder. Every message, every call, every transfer had led here. And it had happened so quietly, so naturally, that I didn't even recognize the danger until it was standing at my door, or at least felt like it was. The reply I finally sent to that email was careful. Too careful. I read it over and over before sending, removing anything that sounded emotional, anything that could be twisted. I explained the relationship the way someone explains a mistake they didn't mean to make. I didn't deny receiving money. I didn't claim innocence. I focused on intent, on misunderstanding, on how things slowly got out of hand without me noticing. When I clicked send, I felt empty, like I had handed over the last bit of control I thought I still had. Days passed. Then weeks. No response. That waiting did something to me. It made me replay everything from the beginning, but this time without excuses. I saw myself clearly. Not as a villain, but not as a victim either. Just someone who enjoyed the benefits of a situation and kept quiet because speaking up would have cost me comfort. That realization hurt more than the fear ever did. Then she messaged me again. Just one line. She said she hoped I had learned something from all this. No anger. No warmth. Just distance. I stared at that message for a long time before replying. I typed and erased words until there was nothing left to say that mattered. In the end, I didn't send anything back. That was the last time we spoke. Not long after, I received a final message from the same official address. They said the matter was resolved and no further action would be taken at this time. Those last 3 words stayed with me. At this time. It wasn't forgiveness. It was a warning wrapped in politeness. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel lucky. I just felt exposed, like someone who had walked too close to a fire and finally felt the heat. After it was over, I didn't know what to do with myself. Nothing had exploded. No arrests. No public shame. Just quiet. But quiet can be louder than any scream when it carries the weight of everything you know you've done. I kept replaying every decision, every moment I accepted her help, every lie I told myself about intentions and love. I realized then that the worst part wasn't being caught. It wasn't the fear, the emails, or the quiet surveillance. The worst part was knowing how easily I had drifted into something wrong without noticing it. I tried to rebuild normal life. I blocked old chats. I avoided certain websites. I stopped checking my emails obsessively. I told myself that learning from this was enough. But even months later, when I saw a number I didn't recognize or a message from someone new, my heart would race, my mind would flash back to her calm voice, the way she had calculated everything so carefully. It's the kind of fear that doesn't leave with time. It hides behind normal days and laughs, waiting to remind you how close you were to losing everything. I won't say I'm proud of what happened, and I won't say I deserved what came next. But I will say this, I learned that distance and trust are fragile. That love can be real and dangerous at the same time. And that choices, even small ones, have consequences you can't predict until they're staring you in the face. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about her. About the calm way she confronted me, the silence that followed, the knowledge that I had no control. And I realize that some lessons don't come gently. Some lessons make you feel powerless, and some leave you carrying a fear you can't shake, even when the danger is gone. That fear is the one thing that stays with you, reminding you every day of how easily a life you thought you understood can turn into something unrecognizable. And that is the story of how I was caught. How a simple mistake, a small drift into taking advantage, became something bigger than I could handle. How someone I loved, or thought I loved, taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Please support me by subscribing and turning on your notifications so you can know when I drop a new video. Thank you.